The lady fired at the big guy, no hesitation. The thing is, this guy wasn't the type you'd want to mess with. He bolted across rooftops in a flashy yellow car, but even then, he couldn't stop her from getting away. All he could do was call for some backup, though the whole scene was really just a daydream cooked up by writer Ellie. What Ellie didn't realize, though, was that she wasn't just an average person. She had skills. Big ones. She could throw knives, leap across crazy distances, skate around like a pro, and take out anyone who stood in her way. In the end, she even managed to blow up the ship carrying some special agents. But get this, just a week earlier, she was your regular novelist. Ellie had written a book called Agent RG. The thing became an instant sensation. People couldn't get enough of it because the character, RG, felt so real, like he might just walk out of the pages. Seeing how much people loved it, she wrote 5 more volumes. Then, on the night of her newest release, her mom called her via video chat. Mom had finished the latest book, but wasn't happy with how it ended. She said it was vague and left everything unresolved. So, she told Ellie she was flying over that weekend to work on a proper ending together. But Ellie figured she should head home instead. She hopped on a train and, right away, ran into a strange dude. He plopped down in the seat across from her and struck up a conversation. Ellie, who had spent years tucked away writing, wasn't exactly used to chatting with men. So, she wasn't sure how to respond. Still, she answered him out of politeness. Things took a turn when the guy pulled out one of her books and started flipping through it. After a bit, he started talking again, claiming to be some kind of secret agent. His stories were wild, and as he talked, Ellie began to see him as the character from her books, RG himself. Things got weirder when a fan recognized Ellie and approached for an autograph. Out of nowhere, the fan pulled out a syringe. Luckily, the strange guy across from Ellie acted fast. Soon, more assassins showed up and chaos broke out. The man grabbed a gun and started firing at the attackers. Each time Ellie blinked, the guy looked more and more like RG from her novels. After the fight, the man tried to take Ellie to safety, but she didn't trust him and bolted in the opposite direction. That decision didn't work out so well because she ran straight into another group of assassins. The strange man caught up, pushed her out of harm's way, and kept fighting. At one point, a window shattered, and someone grabbed him. In Ellie's eyes, though, it looked like he tossed his attacker out effortlessly. Afterward, he helped her up, and they kept running. Soon, they ran into a female assassin. The man shoved Ellie into a restroom to keep her safe while he dealt with it. Even during all this, Ellie kept hallucinating, unable to separate reality from fiction. Eventually, the man managed to get rid of the pursuers. They headed to the back of the train, but more assassins were hot on their heels. At one point, the guy aimed his gun at 2 people chasing them. For some reason, Ellie felt like she'd seen those faces before. Instead of surrendering, the man blasted open a door, tied Ellie up, and escaped with a parachute. Overwhelmed by fear, Ellie fainted. When she woke up, she found herself in the man's home. He introduced himself as Aiden and claimed to be a real secret agent. His mission? Protecting Ellie. Aiden turned on the TV and showed Ellie live footage of her house, where a group of assassins was ransacking the place. Understandably, Ellie freaked out and accused Aiden of being a creep. He explained that the surveillance was set up by his boss, Carlos. Apparently, Carlos was a rogue CIA agent, much like the villains Ellie had written about in her books. Aiden explained that Carlos and his superior, Director Ritter, were searching for a crucial USB drive. Ellie's novels had eerily predicted these betrayals and other details about the CIA, making her a target. It wasn't a coincidence anymore. Ellie was somehow a prophet. As Aiden continued, Ellie learned that the 5th volume of her book was unfolding in real life. Even worse, the CIA had already read it and knew what was coming. That's why they were so desperate to capture Ellie. Luckily, Aiden had gotten to her first. Meanwhile, Director Ritter was fuming at his team's failure. In a fit of rage, he loaded a shotgun and threatened to shoot any subordinate who made another mistake. On Aiden's side, he needed Ellie's help to locate a hacker who had crucial files on a USB drive. Files that could expose massive CIA crimes like election tampering, bombings, and worse. The hacker had jacked up the price for the USB at the last minute and then disappeared. Now, both Aiden and the CIA were hunting him down. The twist? Ellie's book had already described the scene where the hacker was last seen. But since Ellie hadn't written the next part yet, Aiden needed her imagination to figure out the hacker's next move. Ellie admitted she was totally out of ideas and needed inspiration. So, Aiden decided they'd go to London to retrace the hacker's steps. The next morning, they arrived in London, and Aiden took Ellie to a park where the hacker had supposedly been spotted. Ellie started brainstorming, scribbling notes about what might happen next. What neither of them noticed was that Ellie's fans were snapping videos of them and posting them online. Those videos caught Ritter's attention. Using lip-reading tech, Ritter's team deciphered what Ellie and Aiden were discussing and prepared to strike. Ellie wrote that if the hacker didn't show up at the agreed location, the key to finding him might be in a phone he had left behind. In her story, RG cracked the phone and found an encrypted chip, which he used to track the hacker. Aiden, however, had tossed the real phone earlier. With no choice but to improvise, Ellie imagined that the encrypted chip had links to satellites. By pinpointing the right satellite, they could locate the hacker. Ritter's team followed Ellie's imagined plot, while Aiden used his skills to hack into a UK satellite data center. Ellie managed to narrow down the satellite closest to their location and cracked its code, revealing an address. When they arrived at the address, the place was abandoned. Still, Ellie's instincts kicked in. She tore off some wallpaper and discovered the wall behind it was fake. Aiden found a hollow spot in the floor, pried it open, and uncovered a hidden safe. Inside were bundles of cash, a key, and a diary covered in anarchist symbols, a clue that confirmed they were on the right track. Ellie's creative spark reignited as she started piecing together ideas for the next part of the story. But before they could celebrate, trouble found them. A group of assassins stormed the building. Aiden and Ellie hid under the floorboards, but their hiding spot was exposed when Ellie's cat suddenly meowed, giving them away. Aiden didn't have time to second-guess anything. He had to act fast, relying on his sharp instincts and skills to get the job done. Every agent coming after them? Gone. But there was no room for high fives. They had to keep moving. As they hurried out, more backup arrived. Aiden led Ellie up to the rooftop, and from there, they spotted a speedboat nearby. That's when Ellie remembered the boat key they'd found earlier. It clicked. This was probably the hacker's getaway plan. The problem? No ropes, no ladder, nothing to help them climb down. Jumping seemed like the only option. Aiden noticed a tarp on the ground below and figured it could break their fall. Ellie wasn't convinced at all. To test his theory, Aiden grabbed the cat they'd brought along and dropped it. Sure enough, the cat landed safely. Reluctantly, Ellie followed Aiden's lead, and they managed to escape. Later that night, while staying at a hotel, Ellie overheard Aiden on a phone call. The conversation raised red flags. The person on the other end was asking him to bring Ellie to them. Alarmed, Ellie grabbed the cat and fled. Panicked, Ellie called her mother Mary, but she didn't have any money on her. Mary and her husband flew to London, booking a fancy hotel to meet Ellie. When Ellie arrived, her mom was already there, and her dad showed up shortly after. Here's the kicker. Ellie's father turned out to be none other than Director Ritter, though Ellie had no clue about his real identity. She spilled everything that had happened over the past 2 days and handed her father the hacker's diary. As Ritter started reading, the door burst open. Aiden barged in, gun drawn, and took Ritter hostage. Ritter, unfazed, pointed out that killing a CIA director's agents would have serious consequences. Ellie, already overwhelmed, was further stunned when her mom pulled out a gun and aimed it at her. The woman who had raised her was now threatening her life. Aiden, seeing no other way, urged Ellie to trust him. He was the only one who hadn't tried to kill her over the past few days. Left with no choice, Ellie went with him. The next morning, they arrived at a lavish mansion in France, where a man named Alfie, a former CIA director, was waiting. Alfie dropped a bombshell. Ellie wasn't just a novelist. She was actually a CIA agent. The protagonist in her book? That was her. She'd lost her memory during a mission, and Ritter, along with a psychologist posing as her mother, had manipulated her into writing the novels. The books were a clever ploy to draw out hidden information. Ellie's world crumbled. The reality she'd known was a lie. In shock, she ran off. Aiden tried to snap her out of it by provoking her, and surprisingly, Ellie's combat instincts kicked in. She took Aiden down in one swift move, finally accepting the truth. Meanwhile, Ritter deciphered the diary using high-tech glasses that doubled as cameras. On the other side, Aiden filled Ellie in on the bigger picture. Alfie had known about Ritter's shady dealings for a while, but lacked proof. Ellie was their secret weapon to expose him. The person who had gone to the park in London wasn't a stranger. It was Ellie herself, but Ritter had brainwashed her afterward. The diary revealed that the hacker had entrusted the main file to a mysterious guardian named Miss Bada. The catch? Only Ellie could retrieve the USB drive. After much convincing, Ellie agreed to go undercover for a day. They flew to the Arabian Peninsula to meet Miss Bada. Though nervous, Ellie kept her cool and managed to trick Miss Bada into handing over the USB. But when Ellie reviewed the files, her expression turned to shock. She walked out, disheartened, and handed the USB to Aiden. At that moment, Mary showed up, alive and armed. She'd survived the earlier encounter thanks to a bulletproof vest. Since they were on Miss Bada's turf, they couldn't risk a fight. Mary invited them for tea instead. Suspicious, Aiden switched cups with her before drinking, but all three of them ended up unconscious anyway. Ellie woke up in Ritter's office, the USB drive burning in a fire. Ritter revealed another twist. Ellie had always been his agent, working for him all along. Now he needed Alfie's location, but Ellie genuinely didn't know where he was. To pressure her, Ritter brought her to the interrogation room, where Aiden was being tortured. Ritter wanted her to cooperate, but Aiden wouldn't break, even as Ellie begged him to give up the information. Finally, Ellie made a shocking move and shot Aiden. She used the chaos to piece together where Alfie's base might be. When the agents came to dispose of Aiden's body, they got a nasty surprise. He wasn't dead. Aiden took them out, proving Ellie hadn't turned against him after all. Ellie had regained her memories and was working against Ritter. Using a CIA computer, she began sending files to Alfie. Initially, she had been loyal to Ritter, but after discovering his crimes, she'd switched sides. Now, she had only one option: finish the mission and take Ritter down. Ellie confronted Ritter and Mary, taking them out with her revived agent skills. She then met up with Aiden at the armory. Though tensions flared, Ellie managed to convince him to trust her. Armed and ready, they fought their way out of the CIA facility, using smoke bombs and quick thinking. Ritter, watching from the surveillance room, activated the ventilation system to clear the smoke, but the duo escaped into the air ducts. The chase led them to a factory where gunfire erupted. Bullets struck pipes, causing crude oil to spill everywhere. No one dared fire again, fearing a catastrophic explosion. The agents resorted to knives, but Ellie outmaneuvered them, using a pair of improvised ice skates to take down the entire squad. She and Aiden made it to the control room, hoping to send the files from there. Unfortunately, the system required Ritter's retinal scan. As Ritter entered, shotgun in hand, Ellie's cat leapt at him, clawing his eyes. Aiden took the shot, but with Ritter blinded, they needed another plan. Outside, they found a satellite setup. Just as they were about to upload the files, Mary appeared, trying to manipulate Ellie. For a moment, it seemed like Ellie might turn on Aiden, but a female agent Ellie had saved earlier intervened, knocking Mary out cold. The files were successfully transmitted, and they destroyed the boat as they escaped. Ellie, back to being her true self, finished writing the final chapter of her book. The story might have been wild and chaotic, but it was hers to tell. Though the movie's twists might have been over the top, it's an adventure worth remembering. Messy, unpredictable, but undeniably thrilling.